Alright, today we're going to do some TRZ Motorsport tubular upper and lower control arms and some Moroso Trick springs.
But I took the cotter pin out right there, and then I took the castle nut off, and then I just hit that with a rubber hammer. Like that, or you can put the castle nut on backwards if the rubber hammer don't do it. You can put the castle nut on with this side down and thread it up until just the bolt's sticking kind of flush, and hit it with a big hammer and it'll knock it out of there. Or you can get that tool that you stick in there. But anyway, there's only so far I could go beating on the nut right here, so started hitting right there and it popped out. The upper control arm's the easy one. And I jacked up just the car just enough that the wheel, well, it's on the ground now because the upper control arm's out. But I jacked it up just enough that when I took that out, this would hit the ground. All right, then we take these two locking nuts that went on right there and right there, and slide up and back. Here's the control arm we took out. And here's the one we're going to put in it. Actually, I think that's for the other side. But yeah, there's a pretty big weight difference there. A few pounds. For about, I don't know. So they mark these. This one's the passenger side. Right. Passenger. But look, that don't seem like it lines up. It's like it moves it some. Alright, so these came with the ball joint on the left. And we already had these in here. They're longer. They're the 1-inch travel ones. And luckily enough, they fit. So we're going to use those. Alright, we'll put the new ball joint in, tightened her up, slid her on up here. And now we're just going to tighten these bolts back up. Right here and here. But next thing we're going to do is we're going to all the brake stuff off and just hang it off to the side. Then we're going to take our steering rack off, same way as we took that off. Then we'll take our lower control arm out, and then we'll go ahead and take the shock out first. All right, took the bolt out for the shock there. 2 bolts at the bottom, snuck it out. I took the cotter pin out for this, and that one didn't want to come out, so I did flip the castle nut over this way and then screwed it on to where it was flush with the top of the bolt, and then I hit it with that hammer and it popped out. I haven't popped that one out yet, but yeah, this one popped out. It all fell down, and then I didn't even need the spring compressor. That fell right out. Now we'll knock that one out once we get it all off, but we're going to take these 2 big bolts out. Which hopefully that one will come out without having to take all that off of there, but we'll see. And then this back one. And then that should all fall out, and we can put that one in. Alright, got the nuts and bolts out of both sides. I just turned the steering wheel and that moved that out of the way. Got that one out. Now we'll just stick a pry bar in there and pry those out. Should pop out. Alright, there we go. A little prying. Popped right out. Alright, that one didn't want to pop out either. Castle nut upside down. Smack her with a hammer. Came out. We'll have to have 2 hands pulled apart. It's knocked loose. Ta-da! It's apart. And they zip tie these metal bushings in there. Just make sure those stay in there. On both sides, they come out pretty easy. Let's see. One good thing about these control arms look, they move really easy. Christopher's upper control arm, the stock one that was on here, it didn't move very easy at all. I had to actually force it. That one moves really easy. That's going to help. All right, so it wasn't easy prying that in there, I tell you that. And these are locking nuts. They lock on the outside. If y'all are familiar with small block Chevy, they do like the rocker arm nuts do, but that moves all by itself. And this one, everything moves a lot better, and some weight savings there as well. Let's toss the spring in it. So they're the same roundness on the inside. This one's shorter because I cut some off of it. There's a stock spring, but that's a heavier spring. It takes more weight to compress that one. This one will compress 1 inch for every 230 pounds. I think this one compresses 1 inch for every, don't get me lying, it's a stock spring, I don't know. Well, I got these spring compressors on there, and I think I got it compressed enough, but unfortunately, these bolts are hitting the hole up inside there. So it won't go up in there because of those bolts, and if I put it any lower, I'd never be able to get it off. All right, so my buddy TJ enlightened me that I need a spring compressor that goes up inside the spring. So we got this one right here from Advanced Auto. O'Reilly's has them. I don't know if AutoZone has them, but it's the Performance Tool W80554. Let's see how this works. Got my buddy TJ on a job. But we took that tool. We didn't use the top part. We set it over there. And we stuck it through the shock hole. And then we clipped it down here. And then we pulled it up. But man, if you don't get that tool just right, it pulls the spring crooked. And so we're going to hook a ratchet strap to the frame over there, or TJ is, right? And we're going to pull it back over, and we're going to try to jack it up. All right, we ratchet strapped the spring over, and then jacked it up. It fell into the spring pocket. And then we put the upper ball joint nut on and the lower ball joint nut on. There you go. All right, guys, so here's the stock side. Can't really do nothing with it. And then here's the side that we've done.
Not really.
Look,
Can't do nothing.
That's a big difference, man.
Wait.
That's a big difference. Imagine when
Both sides are on.
both sides are on, it'll even do it more.
You don't have to shock on this side too, so that's what's slowing it down. You got the knobs turned up.
No, they're the same on both sides. Full compression, no rebound. And that side is hard to lift up. This side, it lifts up pretty easy. All right, there we go, guys. This side is done. We got the brakes back on. Upper and lower ball joint nuts. And the steering arm there. And got the shock in. Everything's back in. And these control arms, man, they move really easy. Like you can pick the as you saw a minute ago there, you can lift this side up really easy. That side over there, you can't lift it. You can't hardly lift it up. This side you can lift up easy. The shocks are set compression full tight, rebound 0. But yeah, you can lift it up. I wish the shock was strong enough that you lifted it up and it just stayed up. And maybe that'll be the case when we get both sides done, but we'll see. But we'll do the other side off camera. But on these, those springs are making a big difference, believe it or not. The movement of these control arms is making a big difference too. And plus, you know, there's about, I think it's 20 pounds each side, so 40 pounds total. Weight savings are taken off the front of the car. But these control arms did not only give us about 3/8 of an inch more travel than the stock ones. And to be honest with you, you could probably cut this area out of the stock arms and get more travel than what those tubular control arms. But like I said, the way these bushings are in these, you can't even turn this. Can't even turn it. On these right here, turns easy. And that makes a big difference, believe it or not. That makes a pretty big difference. But we'll get back to you once we get the other side down, and we'll see how it lifts up and down then. I mean, because before you couldn't lift the front of this car, and now you can. So now I think where it's a lot easier to lift up, I think, and where we got those Nikki Bobby Caltrac relocation brackets, we can lower that Caltrac arm downhill. Like my thumb's the front of the car. You want that bar going downhill. You get that bar going downhill, it hits the tire harder. If it hits the tire harder, it's going to bring the front end up better. But if it don't keep the front end up going down the track now, after all this, we're going to invest in some Viking double adjustable Crusaders, because those will keep it up for sure. But hopefully this will do it. Oh, something else cool about these is you can lock down the front end. You put this bolt, it's threaded in that hole. See the threads? So it's threaded in that hole, and you screw this in. And it'll go all the way down until it hits right in here. And it'll keep your front end from moving. It'll take the travel out of it. So if you're on a prep side and you don't want a bunch of travel, you want to just lock the front end down, you put that screw down through there and it hits the frame. And when the body tries to go up, that bolt will hit it and these can't move. And it'll keep the car from coming up. It's pretty cool. All right, there we go, guys. Got both sides done. Ta-da! And full compression, no rebound. The ride height's a little bit lower than that. It ain't settled. It'll settle. But watch this. You can pick up on this thing like it ain't nothing. And it stays up. See? Look at that. I barely lifted it up on it with one hand. Let me do both hands on both sides. There we go. I lifted both up on both sides. And it stays up by itself. It already came down a little bit, but it stays up by itself for a while before it comes down. So this is going to work. This is going to work for sure. That front end is going to come up and it's going to stay up for sure now. It won't take much power at all to get that front end to come up and stay up. The stock springs just wasn't working. But definitely this is going to work. And it takes it a while to come back down to ride height. Let's see if I can push it back down. See, and that's ride height. It'll come down more. It's still got to settle. We'll come out here tomorrow and see what it looks like. But we do want the front end a little bit higher than the rear end. And it is, just a little. And that's the way we want it. Because it's, the higher the front end is, it transfers the weight to the back of the car. Yes, sir, that's how that works. But yeah, tomorrow we're going to put on these Nikki Bobby. There's some Nikki Bobby Caltrac relocation. So you can relocate the Caltrac bar. So you can hit the tire harder. You got that bar in the back. I don't know if y'all can see it or not. But the more downhill that bar is towards the back of the car, the harder it hits the tire. See, we're about parallel to the ground. We needed to go downhill just a little. so it'll hit the tire harder and dig into the ground. And that'll lift the front end up and keep the front end up now that we've got this set up. And it should go right down the track now. Should be able to roll in more power on the 60 foot on no prep. But y'all stay tuned. We'll see how it works next year. We'll hit some no prep races. Passenger side, middle of tire. Driver's side, middle of tire. Passenger side, wheel barely touching. Driver's side, wheel barely touching. Alright, I gave the car a day, all night to settle. What's our new ride height on the passenger side? I can't see it. And on the driver's side, 28 5/8, about an 1/8 inch higher on this side.
And fully extended now, after we did all that to the front end, we're just a touch over 35 inches. So we gained about 3/8 of an inch, 3/8 to a ½ inch.
I don't know if the front fender is symmetrical with the rear fender, but on the rear driver's side, it's 29 and some change, so it's about an inch higher in the rear. This is the passenger side. What do we got there? $29 1/4. And then on the driver's side, 29 1/8, it looks like. Almost 16th maybe. This side sits lower for some reason. But yeah, if the fenders are symmetrical, it is higher in the rear by about an inch. I don't think they're symmetrical though, because the front end looks like it's a little bit higher than the back, which is good for no prep racing, in my opinion. Because if you look at it from this way, well, the rear tire is bigger too. Well, we can measure down at the frame. Let's do that. All right, after using the body line and the frame, the rear is a ½ inch higher. It just looks like the front end's a little bit higher because this tire is smaller. This is a 27 inch tire. That's a 28 inch tire. So yeah, the rear is about a ½ inch higher at this ride height, which I think is perfect. Man, if you look at it, it looks like the front's higher. To me it does, but it's not. The rear's a ½ inch higher. All right, so a few things you want to check after you get done doing stuff like this. You know, adding more travel, new shocks, blah, blah, blah. You want to put the car at ride height first. It's not at ride height right now. I'm messing with the rear end. I jacked the rear end up. It raised the front end. Figure that out. But anyway, at ride height, see if you can. That thing on the left, that washer looking thing, that's the stopper for the shock. And there's the bottom of the shock. You want to make sure you have at least about an inch of downward shock, you know, left to go. That way, when you go over bumps and stuff, it ain't bottoming out the shock. Also, you want to make sure with the front end raised all the way up, fully extended, that you're not topping out the shock before the suspension tops out. You want the suspension to top out first. And the way you can do that is if, you know, extend the suspension all the way. When you put the shock in, extend it all the way. And when you put it in, you should have to compress it a little before you can get those bottom bolts in. Or you can do like I did, because I had to actually lower the car to get the shock in because the spring wanted to bow out on me and it didn't want to let me put the shock in. But anyway, I put the shock in, I put it at ride height, put the shock in, bolted it all up, and then I extended the suspension and I loosened that bolt. When I loosen that bolt, if you loosen that bolt and that drops down, the bolt drops down, or you see the suspension lower, that means your shock's topping out before your suspension does, which means you need either a longer shock or you can extend the shock. They've got those things you can screw onto these to extend it. That's what we've done. It's got an extender on it. But now if your shock's bottoming out at ride height, or when you bounce the car it's bottoming out, you'll have to get a shorter shock. There's no way around that, unfortunately. Now, I mean, you could drop the shock down the bottom, cut it out real big where the knobs don't hit, and put extenders on the bottom, but I don't know. Some people don't want to cut on those because those control arms are pretty expensive, but you could do that or buy another shock. Another thing you want to do is you want to extend the front end, jack it up and extend the suspension on the front end, and turn the wheel in a manner that it's going to make this brake line, which on this wheel would be this wheel, turn that way. And you want to make sure you still have some wiggle in your brake line. If that brake line's like tight, you're going to have to get a longer brake line. You want to check it on that side as well. So that's how you double check the shock and everything. So this one's not even coming close to bottoming out. And actually, I checked it. I actually undid the upper ball joint and popped it out and let the shock catch the suspension, and that put us at like 36 1/4 on the fender here, measured to the ground. And right now we're only a little over, we're at right at 35, a little bit over 35, whereas before, what was we later in the video, 34 5/8, something like that. So we did gain about 3/8 with those control arms. But honestly, if we would have cut these control arms out in this area, we could have got just as much travel. But this area right there, but like I said, those don't move as good. That movement, the way as easy as those moves, makes a big difference. And also using those lighter springs that are longer and they're compressed more, they compress, I calculated about 900 pounds on each corner. The springs compress an inch for every 230 pounds. So I don't know, do the math on that. 4 inches. And you know, 4 inches of travel here is, you know, a bunch more at the tire because the way those pivot out. But yeah, so there's more stored energy to move everything up, push the car up, whereas those were short and they didn't compress much because those compress at like 450 pounds per inch. Those Moroso Trick springs are going to be a game changer. Plus, you know, the tubular upper and lowers, you know, moving so freely is going to help a lot. But I thought they would give us a little more travel, and they did not. It was only about 3/8 of an inch.
And also, when you get a bunch of travel like this, car moving up and down, you might want to invest in a bump steer kit, which will help with the tire from towing in and out when you hit bumps or the front end coming up and down, etc. It just helps with the steering and the stability.
But yeah, back here we're just going to do these Nikki Bobby Gap Brackets. They're like a relocation bracket for the Caltrac bar there. See that bar? That's what I call downhill towards the rear of the car. The more downhill that bar is, the harder it hits the tire. And his is more parallel, and we wanted to lower it downhill some. You know, not that far downhill, but you know, that's in that direction downhill to get it to hit the tire more. But unfortunately, these brackets are not going to work. because this goes on the inside just like this. Well, these have a sway bar that comes over, and that sway bar bolts in right there. And look, that bracket's in the way. Now if I turned it, or, you know, put the driver's side on the passenger side, this would hit the rim. All this would hit the rim. So I can't do that. The only way I could get those to work is to cut all this off. Cut all that off. Or maybe just cut a spot in here where the sway bar, the end of the sway bar, can go into that, and that bolts on this on the inside, but the sway bar would be right here. So that ain't gonna work. Plus the shock perch is like that, and whereas the shock perch for this one, there's a bracket that bolts right here that the shocks go on. See, those are mainly made for an S10, I believe, because on a S10 the shock comes down this way, and then it would bolt, you know, right to the back of that like it's supposed to. But that ain't the way these bolt in. They bolt in like that tab would be coming off the front, and on the other side the shock bolts to the back, so there's a tab that comes off the back. So there's no way the stock sway bar or the stock shock mounting location is going to work on these gap brackets from Nikki Bobby, unfortunately. So buddy of mine, he has an S10, and I'll show you his right here. He actually drove it over here and hung out with me today.
Yeah, as you can see here, those would work perfect on an S10. That outside bracket part where the shock bolts to, it'd work perfect.
But let's see, those would work perfect on something like that. But yeah, they don't work on. They ain't gonna work for this unless we relocated the sway bar and the shock, and that's just too much work. We can actually move that bar up one hole on the front, and that'll give us a little bit more, you know, downhill, whereas before it was pretty much parallel. We want it to come downhill a little. But yeah, well, that's gonna do it for that. If y'all have any questions, just hit the comments there. I wish we could have got that gap bracket to work, but we'll probably see if Nikki Bobby can't fab it to work for us, or, you know, sell it to a buddy. I got a buddy that's got a couple of S10s. He might want it, but we'll see. Y'all have a great day, and thanks for watching.